You are listening to the Pump Take Football Show with Jake Hills and Aidan Sneed.
Welcome back to the Pump Take Sports Show. The draft has officially closed. It's over. By the time you're watching this, it'll be well over, and you'll have your own time to think about it. But we have not yet talked about what exactly has happened in the NFL draft. We watched it together, and it was an excellent night, good time. And it's always fun to see where these guys go and how the draft really falls, because you can never really predict how it really plays out. The biggest surprise being, we're going to go through every pick and just talk about it generally. It's going to be a bit more free-flowing than some of our other videos, but the biggest surprise to me within the top 10 was when Patrick Surtain was picked at number 9. Just because everyone thought he was going to go to Dallas, and you had not heard a single whisper connecting Denver to Pat Surtain throughout the entire offseason.
Yeah, like you said, we'll talk about it a little more before, but I do think that was the first big shocker. Like, you could argue J.C. Horn maybe, but and argue Jalen Waddle, but I think, like you said, when we watched it together, some of us saw those two coming just before, but Surtain was like right as the pick was announced. Yeah. That was a big shock.
Exactly. The first overall pick was pretty obvious. When we were watching it together, it was like, all right, great. They finally pulled the trigger on the thing we all knew they were going to do. Mm-hmm. And then the second overall pick, everyone knew that was going to happen as well. There was no surprise there. The third overall pick was the first one that was, like we said, it was the talk of the draft. It was the turning point of the first time the draft had a turning point all the way through. And you actually were kind of on the Trey Lance at 3 wave early. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking to myself, like, we've talked all through the draft videos, anyone who follows our draft stuff knows that we were never really buying into the Mac Jones stuff, but the rumors were just so consistent and constant that it did seem like there was a possibility. So really it was a toss-up between the 3 guys, but they ended up going with Trey Lance, which I really like the pick. If you're in a division with the kind of quarterbacks that you're with in that division, like, just gunslingers, you've got to keep up somehow, right? And so Trey Lance allows you to get the highest ceiling possible, I guess, out of these prospects.
Yeah, as you were kind of saying, like, this was the big conversation. We knew Lawrence was going to go 1 and Wilson was going to go 2 for a long time. That had been, established. But then the question mark was 3 with the 49ers. And they, at first it was like everyone was saying it was going to be Mac Jones, which kind of caught everybody off guard at first. And then that became the chalk idea. Obviously we've talked about it a lot of times on this channel that our pick would have been Justin Fields. He's my number 2 quarterback. And I believe he is tied for your number 2 quarterback as well. Mm-hmm. So sitting there at number 3, that's who we would have gone with. But we also well established that, for us, Trey Lance is the far better selection than Mac Jones. So if you're coming down between those two, the 49ers got the better player. I've seen some people say that, the numbers suggest that, shockingly enough, Trey Lance was not that big of a difference in terms of a reach between him and Mac Jones, just because of, the small sample size of Trey Lance kind of skews the numbers that way, and his, how raw he is as a prospect. But just as you said, he has such a high ceiling that if you're gonna be choosing between those two, if Trey Lance is boom or bust, great. You kind of win either way. If you just get stuck with like Derek Carr as your quarterback, that's not really a W for trading 3 first-round picks and picking at number 3 overall. So I think the 49ers made the right selection there. If it was between him and Mac Jones.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it was interesting that Trey Lance said right after he got drafted, he's like, I honestly found out about this 5 minutes ago. Like, I had no idea that this was going to happen. And I honestly believe him. I really think that Lynch and Shanahan really did bring it down to the wire where no one knew. Like, I don't think anyone had an indication other than those 2 guys who was going to be picked 3rd overall.
Yeah, someone in that building had to have liked Mac Jones to the point where, it was going to be a discussion up until the end, I believe anyways.
Oh, absolutely. The next pick being, honestly, the next 2 picks were a little bit they were the favorite to go. If you were to look at like the odds before the draft, Kyle Pitts going to Atlanta was such a good pick for them. Like, it was who we had in our mock for a while now. It's just, you take the possibility of a generational talent at tight end at 4th overall. We talked when we were sitting in person. we would have both probably traded the pick down just to get assets.
Yeah.
But this at the same time, you cannot fault the Falcons for making a good pick with the 4th overall pick. At least they picked a guy that is almost bust proof, really, and has an incredibly high ceiling. So Kyle Pitts was an overall really good pick for the Falcons at 4, as well as Jamar Chase at 5. I mean, they have a similar thing.
The only thing I'll add to the number 4 pick, I do think, my first 2 choices would have been either select a quarterback or trade down. But, some of the other moves that the Falcons have made, they've sort of hinted to us that that's not, like, neither of those 2 things are really what they want to do. Number one, the way they restructured Matt Ryan's contract, as we've talked about at length, kind of suggests that they weren't looking at quarterbacks yet. And number 2, the idea of trading Julio Jones. At first, I looked at it as like, okay, this might be a move towards the future. But at the same time, we have sort of said that it doesn't not make sense to trade Julio now, where he is with injuries, with age, with contract. And if that's the case, maybe they just want to replace him with a Julio Jones, elite prospect caliber weapon in Kyle Pitts. So, if you weren't going to trade down or take a quarterback, Kyle Pitts was the pick. With Cincinnati at number 5, this is another big debate pre-draft, whether it was going to be Penei Sewell or one of the weapons, either Pitts or Chase, whoever, was there or the Bengals preferred. And you know what, we said it a lot before. I think you couldn't go wrong with either choice. It just depends on where you wanted to go first, whether it was O-line or weapon for Burrow. Yeah. And, at the end of the day, they went with reuniting Burrow with his college teammate who he had a ton of success with. And, even though, we'll talk about this in another video because we're only doing the first round. So we'll review the second round picks later when they went with Jackson Carman. Yeah. Wouldn't have been my pick for O-line in the second, but, he is versatile enough to the point where you pair Chase and Carman. That's a good return to protect Burrow and kind of give him a weapon. So I would have went with Sewell personally, as we've established in our mock drafts, but I'm not going to, get mad about the Chase pick because Chase is an awesome player.
Yeah, absolutely. I always really liked Chase going there. I mean, you can always figure out stuff on the O-line. I mean, but you can always figure out stuff at receiver too. That's what was so interesting about the debate. It was so split down 50-50 of what people wanted. But either way, you're walking away a winner. The Dolphins were the first team that actually shocked people. Taking Jalen Waddle at 6 was the first time that we were like, whoa, okay, now this is getting interesting, because up until that point, it was pretty by the book. And so, I mean, I like Jalen Waddle a lot. I said to you that night, and we both agree on this, is that we'd both rather have Devonta Smith over Jalen Waddle. But that being said, Jalen Waddle is still a very good player for Miami to pick. I'm a little bit surprised they didn't take Penei Sewell here, to be honest with you. That would have been what I did. But, I mean, Jalen Waddle is a good player. It's just, why pick him over receivers that might be better, or an O-lineman that's absolutely better at his position? And when you look at just like, an amazing tackle to protect Tua for the rest of time, or, a receiver, when you can just get a receiver with your next pick, which is they pick 18 again. It's like, I think you said it actually on draft night. It's like, I'd rather have Penei Sewell and any receiver at 18 than Jalen Waddle and any O-lineman at 18.
Yeah, imagine coming away with Sewell and Kadarius Toney.
Yeah.
With as your 2 picks. I think you'd be pretty happy with that. As far as the debate between Smith and Waddle, I do agree, like, in a nutshell, Devonta Smith is the better, more polished player. But I also think, who you pick depends on what you need and, what the rest of the team looks like. And that was what, in my opinion, what made the Waddle pick so questionable, because number one, they signed Will Fuller. I know it's only a 1-year deal, but that's kind of the role you expect Jalen Waddle to play, at least in year 1. And number 2, Tua is not this like cannon for an arm, deep ball throwing quarterback. So to surround him with 2 of his number 1 receivers as deep threats, kind of weird when you have somebody like Devonta Smith who can get open underneath. And, also has some deep elements to his game. So, I'm not ready to write off Tua like some people are, but stylistically, kind of a weird selection there. I mean, maybe, the Dolphins aren't as sold on Tua as they seem, and they just think that Waddle's better. And, maybe if Tua can't throw the deep ball, they'll move on from him and, get somebody who can to maximize Waddle. But yeah, I think we're both on the same page here as far as the fit, and the, place in the draft where Waddle was selected was a little bit, open to question. Not the end of the world because of Waddle. Waddle is an amazing player, but I think there is a chance to look back at this and be like, okay, they could have gotten a better fit, a better player here down the road, which is why we're questioning that. As far as the Lions at 7, not much to really say here. I mean, Sewell, most people projected him to go earlier. A year ago, there was conversation that he could be the number 2 overall pick. He's been a generational tackle prospect for a while. Some people kind of talk themselves up in circles out of that this off season, just because that's what people do in draft season.
Mm-hmm.
But any way you slice it, the Detroit was looking for physical players this offseason with their new regime, and they got the best one in the draft with Sewell, franchise tackle prospect. Perfect fit. If they weren't going to go Justin Fields here, if they wanted to kick the can down the road on a franchise QB, this was the choice. They made it. Great pick for Detroit.
And it might end up haunting them a little bit in the fact that Justin Fields will play them twice a year for a long time. But Penei Sewell is the guy you pick here if you don't pick Justin Fields. So, I mean, it's the second best option, like you said. And the thing is, too, is that when they showed the Lions war room right after the pick and the GM was throwing his clipboard, he was getting so fired up, I'm like, oh my God, they took Justin Fields, because it was before the pick was announced.
It seemed that way.
That is some quarterback energy right there. But it was actually just for Penei Sewell, which, I mean, I can't blame the guy for being so excited.
Makes sense. Yeah.
The next pick being J.C. Horn.
Yeah.
Which actually, if you remember, in our first mock draft ever, I had J.C. Horn going, I think, to the Niners at 12th overall.
Yeah.
This was back. The draft changes so much now when you look at the board, but I think it was the Niners at 12th overall.
That was right. Yeah.
And that was like considered pretty high for J.C. Horn at the time. But here he goes, number 8 overall. And as I was kind of lying to you at the beginning of the video saying Surtain was the most surprised. This one was very, very surprising, because Justin Fields was still sitting on the board for the Carolina Panthers. And I know they have Sam Darnold, but that probably should have been the pick in hindsight.
Yeah. I mean, we're saying it the entire time until Fields was drafted that we were like, would have picked Fields there, would have picked Fields there. Good pick, but I would have picked Fields there. And I feel like if Justin Fields is good, we're going to look back and still be saying that about a lot of these teams. I'm not a Darnold believer. I would have picked Justin Fields. But even if the Panthers didn't want to go with Justin Fields, this isn't the player I would have picked. And it certainly isn't the player. Like, I had Patrick Surtain. We both had Patrick Surtain as our number 1 corner. And this is not like shitting on the pick or shitting on J.C. Horn, because there's a lot of worse picks you could make. You could have picked a running back. They went for a position of value. But also, as some people have said, he doesn't fit the scheme at all. Like, J.C. Horn is clearly his one thing that he was really good at was press man coverage. And the Panthers, played the least press man coverage in the league last season. So, probably changing their scheme now with J.C. Horn coming in here.
Yeah.
But again, this is just another pick where it's like, even to a higher degree, I would say, than the Waddle pick, where you're like, man, not a bad player, but when you look at, everything that happened around him in the draft, I think this is one where we could look back and be like, okay, if J.C. Horn doesn't reach his potential, there is definitely some questioning that could happen with this pick.
100%, because it's a ceiling pick, right? It's like, if he works out and he's as good as his ceiling suggests, good pick. But if anything else happens, it's a bad pick, because you look at the guys that are drafted underneath him. Like, in my opinion, both of our opinions, a better corner was drafted 1 pick after him, which stings. But then you have all the amazing, like, if Micah Parsons works out, if Justin Fields turns out to be, what Justin Fields could be, like the Heisman winner, like, I'm not saying I love any of those players at all, but it's just like, you're taking a guy at 8 that you could probably get back at, I don't know, trade down just a few picks. Let the Eagles trade up for Devonta Smith at 8 if they were so eager to do so. And, you can make something work.
And the other question is the O-line, which we brought up in our last mock draft video. That's still a massive question.
Yeah, the Chargers. The Chargers got an absolute steal with Slater falling to 13.
And we'll get to that.
Yeah. My mind went there, but
I know we were all thinking it at the time as well.
Devonta Smith. Sorry, go ahead.
As far as the Denver Broncos go, which are the next pick here, they select Patrick Surtain, and it's weird for me to not like this pick, because I love Patrick Surtain, and getting him as the second player off the board here, or a second corner, off the board here is fantastic. But like, passing on Justin Fields is really questionable to me. Now, there's still rumors that this is the spot for Aaron Rodgers if he forces his way out of Green Bay. It's a sensitive topic.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk about that right now, but if that happens, then this pick looks a lot smarter. But as of right now, you know, and I'm not worried about like some people saying that corner wasn't a need. They have Kyle Fuller there on a 1-year deal, and he's getting older, so that's not why I don't like it. I think this is a good pick, good fit. Just the quarterback room with Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. You have a Super Bowl caliber roster around them, but you don't have a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, not even close. So passing on a quarterback here, you know, just kind of feels like you're treading water no matter who you pick.
Absolutely. There's no one that you can pick here that makes the pick look good if you're not taking a quarterback. And in terms of the Aaron Rodgers situation, I'm going to table that for another video where I have my thoughts more collected on it, because I'm all over the place with the Aaron Rodgers stuff. So if I'm going on the internet to publicly speak about my favorite team and my favorite player of all time possibly having a separation, I need to write something down that's much more prepared than what is here at the moment.
And it hasn't happened yet, so we don't.
And it hasn't happened yet. Exactly. Aaron's too busy at the Kentucky Derby right now to be wearing.
That's right.
I want a hat like he has. Honestly, that hat is the coolest hat ever. He's wearing this little cool bowler hat thing with his long hair coming out the back.
I didn't see that.
It's looking great. The next pick, and I agree with everything you said about Surtain. And then the Philadelphia Eagles traded up and they picked Devonta Smith, which was everyone had that like mocked to happen. It was kind of the match made in heaven. I mean, there's nothing really much you can say about it. I mean, everyone had talked about in nauseum pre-draft that this was the thing that was going to happen for all the reasons that they had suggested. So I think it was a good pick for the Eagles.
Yeah, I agree that it was a good pick. Obviously, you know, I'm not totally impartial here because at the time, obviously, the reason why they traded up was because they knew the Giants were going to take him, which, you know, came out after the draft. That was true. The Giants would have taken Devonta Smith if he fell to 11. So the Eagles traded up. They conspired with my two worst enemies. They conspired together to, you know, snipe the Giants. What ended up happening in the end, as we'll talk about, is what I wanted anyway. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise. But, you know, I do think as far as the fit between the Eagles and Devonta Smith, much as it pains me to say, it is a good fit. You know, if you were looking at some of the the post-draft pictures, it was clear Devonta Smith did not want to go to the Eagles, just based on the expression on his face and, you know, his attitude towards that. But who does at this point? They're kind of a mess. You know, so I can't really blame him. But as far as the actual draft pick itself, I do like it. We probably should have clarified this beforehand, but we're now at pick number 10. Do we want to be giving these grades? Do we want to go back and, you know, give it a letter grade, or do you want to just roll through and?
Well, we'll start giving a grade now, like as we roll through.
I think, you know, our grades kind of came out in what we kind of said. You know, I love the Trevor Lawrence pick. You know, Zach Wilson is okay. You know, so, you know, I think those picks are pretty relatively chalk, besides maybe the Horn and Surtain and Waddle picks.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a big fan of Zach Wilson, so there's that. But, you know, other than that, I think we can just do that going forward. And it's a good place to start too, because the Chicago Bears at 11 here traded up with my favorite team, the New York Giants, to make, I think, generally speaking, what most people believe is the pick of the draft, getting quarterback Justin Fields here. Your thoughts on this pick?
Yeah. At the time when they traded up, I was like, oh no, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. And I'm going to have to hate Justin Fields for the next 10 years if he's good. And they did it. They traded up. They picked Justin Fields. They didn't give up an absurd amount to pick him. And they are going to change their franchise doing it, because I think Justin Fields is a great quarterback. I think he's far better on tape than Trubisky ever was, who was the last quarterback they traded up for. And so this is an A+ grade for me. I hate to say it because it's the Bears and the Packers are going to have to play them 2 years in a row. But this was such a smart move, with Green Bay barely treading water to keep our quarterback around. The Lions just in this weird rebuild thing, and the Vikings kind of suck. This is a huge move for the Bears here, with some expiring contracts in the future and some veterans who are probably going to be walking away. To get a guy like this who can lead you into the next generation, not even generation, the next just like teams work in quarterback windows. And the Trubisky window was a mess. It was an absolute mess. And so this Fields window, it gives them real potential to do some pretty scary things in the NFC North if they're able to keep the rest of the roster around him solid.
Yeah, it's also an A+ pick for me. I think it is probably the best pick in the draft. and it's weird because it was kind of made probably out of desperation. Like this was going to be Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy's last year. They were going to be fired. Like everyone thought they were lame ducks at this point. They were just kind of sticking around because that's what NFL teams do. They always keep their coach and GM 1 year too long, 1 year longer than they probably should. In this case, it paid off just by blind luck because the Bears needed to make this move.
Yeah,
and
did.
If you like Justin Fields as much as I do, my number 2 quarterback, very close to Trevor Lawrence in my eyes. You could make an argument that he's the best quarterback in Bears franchise history already, which is insane to say, but that's just the state of the Chicago Bears. So you give hope to the city of Chicago. You give hope to the Bears as a franchise. You give hope to Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace. You give hope to Allen Robinson, who now has the best quarterback he's ever played with in his career. Just a franchise-changing move. Like the moves don't come more franchise-changing than this.
Oh. And the thing is, bro, is that's exactly the reason why our grades are so low on the probably 3 teams above the Bears here at 12 who just didn't take Justin Fields. Because me and you are of the belief, I know we think similarly on this, that it's like quarterback, like Grand Canyon gap, and then the next most valuable position. In the draft, you just take quarterbacks because if it works, it changes your franchise. Sure, JC Horn could be amazing. But even if
Sam Darnold stinks,
it's a better pick.
Yeah,
even if Justin Fields sucks, it's a better pick.
Exactly.
Because you rolled the dice on getting, like, being in a Super Bowl window for 10 years. JC Horn doesn't put you in any window. But anyway, I'm not shit talking JC Horn. I quite like him as a player, actually. But
yeah, it's just that's what it is with the quarterback position. And we should say it about the Eagles as well, because I'm not I like Jalen Hurts a lot, so it pains me to say I don't believe in him as a quarterback for the future. I see him as a long-term backup. So Justin Fields, you could say the same thing about them, about the Broncos. I think the Lions are an exceptional case because they're probably going to be, if not the worst team, the second worst team in the league next year.
Yeah.
So they kind of have a mulligan here in terms of that. So yeah, I mean the Bears, they outsmarted all of those teams above them, and they made the right pick here, in my opinion. So not much more we can say about that. The Bears have changed their franchise with that pick if it pays off like we expect it to. Dallas Cowboys here at number 12, trading down with the Eagles. They originally picked at number 10. As we said, the Eagles hopped the Giants to take Devontae Smith. Here, the Cowboys take Micah Parsons, who I don't think you haven't said much about what you think of Micah Parsons. I love him. I think he's a great player. He was my number 1 linebacker, consensus number 1 linebacker. The fit here is a huge question. And it's not like last year where the Cowboys took CeeDee Lamb and the fit was a question, but, they ended up throwing CeeDee Lamb in the slot and, it ended up making sense. Whereas with Micah Parsons, you can't put him on the field without, getting rid of Jalen Smith and or Leighton Vander Esch in some capacity. And they picked Jabril Cox in the 4th round. So, that's another huge question. Like, how are these guys going to get on the field? Obviously, linebacker, a lower position of value as well. So it's a very Jerry Jones pick with Micah Parsons and the character concerns. I don't know. I love the player. Fit is a huge question. Obviously, the Cowboys also desperately needed a starting corner. They did not get one in this draft. So with all that in mind, I'm going to give it a B-. That's factoring in the character concerns, the fit, positional need, all that stuff. But the player is great, so that brings it up a lot higher.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a B+. I think Micah Parsons is an incredibly good player, as you do as well. I don't think I don't think the gap between him and the other top linebackers like JOK or, I don't know, name the other top guys, it's not exceptionally high. I do think he's the best. I don't think he's like Chase Young compared to his cohort, in terms of difference in skill. But I agree with you. When we were talking the night of the draft, the problem is that the Cowboys don't run a defense that can get him effectively used year 1. So that has to be a major concern with the pick. So not to just echo what you just said about the Micah Parsons pick. I love the player, but it's a B+ for me just because it just doesn't really make sense. But of course, Jerry picks him the top defensive prospect in the draft. Jerry just jumps right on that, regardless of fit. Best player available is how.
And Jerry loves the character questions as well, which apparently Micah Parsons has some serious allegations against him as well. And Jerry does not even care about that a little bit.
No.
So yeah, I think we kind of summarized that really nicely. Great player, weird fit, weird choice for the Cowboys with their needs, but. Moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers here, this is like the exact polar opposite of Micah Parsons. Perfect fit. perfect player, second best tackle in the draft. Chargers' biggest need, left tackle. He'll slide right in there, start. The Chargers have completely overhauled their offensive line in front of Justin Herbert, getting Corey Linsley, Matt Filer, getting Brian Bulaga back.
Such a good.
Getting
the Chargers
Rashawn
had an
Slater.
amazing draft.
Yeah, and their second round pick wasn't too shabby either. One of my favorite corners, getting Asante Samuel Jr.
Yeah.
So yeah, they had an amazing draft. This is an A+ pick for me.
Yeah, unquestionably, not going to waste anyone else's time. A+ pick, like protector for Herbert for his entire career. So great pick in Rashawn Slater. Just this is how you draft at 13. You let it come to you and you make the right decision. Unbelievably good pick for the Chargers. The next pick is similar in the same vein. I know both of us are a little lower if you watch our other draft videos before the draft on Elijah Vera Tucker in just like how we grade him. We do grade him as a guard, not a tackle. Some things like refer to him as a tackle, but he is a guard. His versatility does bring up his grade a little bit, but the Jets actually traded up to get him with the Vikings. But the thing that it will be forgotten is that they did not give up too much. The Vikings didn't really give the Jets much, or the Jets didn't really give the Vikings anything to trade up. So really, Elijah Vera Tucker did cost them an extra pick, but it wasn't exceptionally high price tag. This is like a B pick for me, not B+, not B-, just B. I mean, you have to get more on your offensive line to protect Zach Wilson, but I think there was just so much better players still on the board that it makes the pick look a little bit wasted at 14.
Yeah. For me, I'm a little bit harder on this pick. So number one, I agree with you. They only gave up 2. So they moved down the exact same amount of spots that the Giants did the Vikings. They moved down 9 spots, just like the Giants did. The Giants got a first round pick next year, which, everyone around the NFL is saying those are like gold because, we're not going to be theoretically in a COVID offseason. There's a lot of people that, opted out of the draft to come back next year. So the draft next year is going to be loaded. So the Giants got that first round pick from the Bears, whereas the Vikings only got 2 third-round picks, which is, that's a lot, but it's not as much to move down the same amount in the draft. With that being said, when you're giving up 2 third-round picks for a guard, that changes things. If you're moving up for a tackle or a corner, that's a little bit, that makes more sense. If this was Darisaw, okay, I'll probably give it a B as well, because, I'm not big on trading up for non-quarterbacks in the first place. But, if you're getting a franchise tackle, okay, that you talk to me a little bit there. When it's Elijah Vera Tucker, who I'm not very high on in the first place, like he's just a guard. He's just going to be like a solid guard, which you can get. There's like 5 solid guards still in free agency.
Yeah.
I'm going to give this a C-, like kind of gross in my opinion. I don't know why the Jets felt the need to do this. Like if you really wanted a first round guard, just stay at 23 and, select Landon Dickerson or something, one of the like 20 guards that went in the second, third round. So I don't know, pretty bad pick to me. Like you said, the Jets needed to do it. So I'm not being too hard on it. Like they needed an offensive lineman. They can't go in with another quarterback and not build around him. But yeah, I just
it was the trade up that made it weird. You're right.
Exactly. The trade up, like weird. If they took AVT at 23, okay, then I might also give that a B, even though I'm not the biggest fan of him. But giving up 2 third-round picks when you're in the shape of roster that the Jets are in, not really a good decision.
It makes it look silly
on a guard.
Right. Yeah, no, you're totally right. It does make it look silly. And the AVT pick is not. It's not thrilling. It's not making you jump for joy at 14. Mac Jones was next by the Patriots. Like, where do you even start with the funny jokes about Tom's combine picture and Mac Jones' combine picture? The system QB is back. Like, you could any sort of draft thing you read is going to talk to you about the Mac Jones fit in New England. I mean, the guy can barely get the ball down the field, and so he has 2 now big tight ends to catch for him, like 5 yards down the field. So that'll be nice for him. If Mac Jones turns out to be amazing and everyone's just wrong, that'd be kind of funny. But I mean, I like the fit, I guess, because you're taking a quarterback, which is always a good idea. Like, even if he's bad, it's still a good idea to take a quarterback and gamble that you can develop him to be good. I'd probably give the pick Mac Jones. I'd probably give the pick a B+ because I like that the Patriots are doing this while they have Cam on the roster so that they can play Cam and then develop Mac in the background. And I like that they picked a quarterback in the top 15 because, like I've talked about before, picking a quarterback is always the most valuable thing you can do.
Yeah, I'm also going to give it a B plus. It's closer to an A minus than a B, I would say, just because it's a quarterback. And the other thing is, it's kind of weird. I feel like Mac Jones was negatively affected because this is where he was. Everyone projected him to go in this 15 range, particularly to the Patriots, before the 49ers traded up. And then the 49ers trade up, and it becomes everyone's, not goal, but like everyone was shitting on Mac Jones, myself included, because he did not deserve to go number 3. It's nothing wrong. It's nothing to, hate on Mac Jones as a prospect. But if the 49ers were going to do that, it would be an egregious reach because that's just shouldn't be where Mac Jones goes. In this 15 range, I feel like that's a lot more comfortable. But, no one can forget that, that process of Mac Jones being talked about in the top 5. And that kind of leaves a stain on how we see him as a prospect. But I agree with you. Like, it's a quarterback. The Patriots, theoretically, he fits their scheme because he's not Tom Brady, like some people want to say. I don't even think we'll ever see a Tom Brady again because, just of the way that he is as a player. He's such a unique player. But, theoretically, he fits what they want to do. He's a quarterback. Good time to take a shot on him. I think, no matter what the Patriots do, whether they stick with Cam, whether they go with Mac Jones, they're going to be like an 8-9, I guess 8-9, 9-8 type team next year.
Yeah.
So, or not 9-8, but you know what I mean? There's going to be that extra game. This is going to confuse me for the rest of the time. With
silly changes. I don't understand really why they're doing it,
but you get my point there. They're going to be in the same spot no matter what they do. If they want to reshoot on QB next year, they can. So B+ for me. Moving on to the Arizona Cardinals here at 16, they take Zaven Collins, linebacker out of Tulsa. For me, weird pick. Like, this is kind of, I like Zaven Collins. This is a little early for me where I had him. He was my number 3 linebacker. You see where JOK went in the draft, and you see this, like, you kind of raise your eyebrows a little bit.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is they take Isaiah Simmons last year. Obviously, they're incredibly different players, Collins and Simmons, but I don't know. Spending off-ball linebacker is not a high position of value. They need a lot of other things. They need defensive back.
Yeah.
They need wide receiver. They need offensive line. And I'm never a big proponent of drafting for needs, but when your go-to thing is to reach for an off-ball linebacker, then I'm going to start questioning why you didn't go for some of these other, like Christian Darrisaw is sitting on the board.
Yeah, Caleb Farley would have been a good gamble too.
Yeah, good gamble for sure.
You might as well, I would rather have him and Darrisaw than have Zaven Collins at 16. And I actually kind of like Zaven Collins.
I like Zaven Collins too. Yeah, that's why I feel weird about, talking about this pick this way, but it reminds me a lot of the Hassan Reddick pick that they made a few years back, where it was like, okay, I like Hassan Reddick.
He's only had one good season though since he came in the league.
Yeah, and you know what? Zaven Collins is a lot better prospect to me than Hassan Reddick, but I'm just saying it kind of just reminds me of throwback to when the Cardinals did a very similar thing. So I don't know. I'm going to give this a B-.
Yeah, I'm in the same range.
That feels kind of generous, but
the other thing is too, man, is that they could have just traded down because I don't think anyone had Zaven Collins this high on their board. Like, if you look at the teams underneath them, no one picked a linebacker until WFT. But I mean, if they traded down with someone who really wanted to get, let's say, I don't know, like anyone underneath Zaven Collins, they probably could have made that work and still gotten Zaven Collins later. So yeah, I'm in the same range as you for sure. Of course, the Las Vegas Raiders reached. We were joking with a good friend of ours that we watch the draft with every year, and just kind of howling at this pick. Like, I actually don't even dislike Alex Leatherwood, but 17th overall.
Yeah, there's just so many things wrong with it. Like you said, it's what the Raiders do every year. They just don't care about, trying to maximize value. Because the thing is, if you love Alex Leatherwood as the number 17th overall pick, but every other team has him as a second round, third round type player, the solution isn't to just take him where you think he should go. The solution is to manipulate every other person's perception of him and try and maximize value, trade down, take him in the second round, that type of thing. You know what I mean? Like, they just don't care about maximizing value.
Yeah, you could have taken Darrisaw here, who that's maximizing your value, and then gotten Alex Leatherwood with your second pick.
There you go.
Then you have 2 tackles instead of 1, and you spent the same amount of picks. It's just like,
I mean, the irony of the situation is they did get Trayvon Merrick with their second pick, who I would have praised that pick if they took him here.
Yeah.
But that's just dumb luck. That's not the Raiders being smart. That's just how the board fell.
Yeah.
I had Alex Leatherwood as my number 3 guard. I actually love him as a guard. But to me, he has the length and everything to become a good tackle, but he just never really was a great tackle at Alabama. So for me, I see him as a guard, and getting a guard at 17, not the best pick, but if that's where he ends up being, then sure, that's fine, I guess. But you could have gotten him much later at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So for my money, this is a D.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. This is a D, not based on the Raiders' evaluation of the player, just where he went in the draft. Like it's like look at the guys underneath him on our screen right now. It's like I would rather have almost all of them. Other than Najee Harris that you can see on the screen right now, I would rather have all of them. So next up, the Miami Dolphins took Jalen Phillips at 18th overall. Great pick. The board fell to them. Obviously, there's injury concerns. As you were saying in our other video, he retired once because of concussion issues, which is incredibly concerning. But if the pick works out, you get a stud on your defense that can really make an impact and come in. I actually had him mocked here before the draft. I would give this pick a B+. The player injury concerns do raise red flags for me, but if everything works out very well, this is a home run pick.
Yeah, I'm also going to give it a B+. He's my number 1 edge rusher. So I will say it leans more towards an A- again than a B. But those injury concerns are a question. I also I don't really know about the fit here. This is kind of a weird scheme fit for him, where they kind of like to have these hybrid edge rushers. That's not really what Phillips is at all, but he is arguably, right there with Azeez Ojulari as the biggest day 1 impact from edge rusher, I would say. So, I like the pick. Fit questions, and the other thing that brings it down from an A or A- is, again, just the question marks on the O-line that went unaddressed in the first round. And again, we never advocate drafting for need, but in my opinion, if you draft best player available, it's Christian Darrisaw who where need meets best player available, and they did not go that direction. So I have to kind of hit them for that, even though I do like Jalen Phillips as a player. So B+ I think is a nice spot for my number 1 edge rusher there.
Yeah, what grade would you put on the 19th overall pick for WFT Jamin Davis, the linebacker?
I'm going to give it a C+, giving them the benefit of the doubt there. This was a huge reach. He was my number 5 linebacker. He went as the number 3. Consensus was he was more of a second round player because a number of things. Number 1, yes, he's extremely athletic. And he arguably has the highest upside of any linebacker other than Micah Parsons in this draft, but he's extremely raw, and he's only he only started his last year at Kentucky. So he was sitting on the bench for some reason. And that's always a question. It's not like Kentucky had the best linebackers in the world. Why was he stuck on the bench? Question about his last year being his first good year. It just a reach here, but it does.
Oh, we lost him for a second.
Yeah, that is a question. But I do think it's not the worst pick they could have made, just because obviously he's got that athletic upside. The Washington coaching staff is one of the better defensive coaching staffs in the league. So maybe they can bring the best out of him. So that's why I give it a C+ there. It was a reach. He has big bust potential. But also there is that potential for upside, and there were worse picks that could have been made.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny to say, we can praise it because there are worse picks that could have been made, even though it was a bad pick, but that's how the NFL draft works.
Yeah.
Overall. So I'll let you start once again, because this is your team here at 20 overall with the trade.
Sorry, what was your draft grade on Jamin Davis before we move
on? Like a C+. I like Jamin Davis' athleticism, but I just didn't want to echo everything you already said. I like his athleticism, but there are just better players available, and you could have picked Jamin Davis with your second pick. So that's my grade, but I'll let you go in on the Giants because they picked Kadarius Toney with the trade down. And anyway, I'll let you go first.
Yeah. So at first I did not like this pick because I think a big reason why well, number one, I wasn't expecting it, certainly. But the other thing was there was nobody really in this range at first that would have been a fit for Kadarius Toney. I think the first one that you see that, what would have been the next obvious fit was Green Bay, which we mocked Kadarius Toney to them before, I believe. So, we hadn't really seen him in this range, but that's mostly because, there's not really a clear fit for what his skill set is. But the Giants being here now after the trade down, which was a fantastic trade down, I would give that trade down an A+, just getting that first round pick next year, which I will say I like it because if Daniel Jones doesn't work out, you have the ammo to move up for a quarterback next year that you didn't have before. So that's just great foresight by the Giants front office there. They have 2 first round picks that they finally did it. He finally did it. So that's an A+ grade right there. And it does factor into my opinion on the pick here. So I actually liked Kadarius Toney quite a bit. He was ranked as my number 6 receiver coming in. And obviously, like every pick in the draft, a lot of it depends on your fit. So the receivers I had above him were Rashad Bateman, obviously the top 3 who are already off the board. Yeah. But I had Rashad Bateman and Elijah Moore. And neither of those players really fit what the Giants needed. Like Rashad Bateman is just, he brings a lot of what Kenny Golladay does, who they signed in the offseason, and Elijah Moore brings a lot of what Sterling Shepard brings. Kadarius Toney is a whole different breed. I think you can compare him to like a Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, on the lower end maybe, and then on the higher end he has a lot of the same athleticism that Odell Beckham had. And I'm not saying he's Odell Beckham, but that skill set is what the Giants really need to, the PFF podcast says this thing that I really like, that you should build your receiving core like a basketball team, where you have all these different skill sets. You have the contested catch guy, you have the deep threat, you have the underneath slot guy. The Kadarius Toney brings an element to the Giants receiving core that they did not have before. So I like him as a number 2 for the future next to Kenny Golladay. I think, at first I was a little bit sour on this pick, but it's really, really grown on me. Yeah. Obviously, Jacksonville Jaguars head coach Urban Meyer came out and said if the Giants didn't take him and he was still on the board, the pick would have been Kadarius Toney for the Jaguars. So, throw out any idea that it was a reach at all. In any case, I'm going to stop talking about it now. It is my favorite team, so I think I warranted some time to talk about it. But I'll give it a B+/A-. I think you could say either one of those. I think it's solid value. Factoring in the trade down, I think you would give it an A-. Not factoring it in, B+.
Yeah, I think it's an A- pick. At the time, I was bugging you saying phony Tony because that's just what we do to each other, because both of our teams just make silly decisions along the way. But I think with the trade down factored in, which I do factor it in, we were talking right when the Giants were picking at 11. And it was like, well, who are they going to pick here? Azeez Ojulari? Like, they really Kwity Paye? Like they could have really done anything, because the Giants are kind of, Dave is a little bit like the Raiders, where he doesn't try and manipulate the board. He just picks who he thinks is good in that moment. And so factoring in the trade down, if he really liked Kadarius Toney, he still got him plus the picks next year. And that's what makes it an A-. And once again, I like the player. He was catching balls from Trask, so he was definitely reaching out of his comfort zone a little bit to make some of those catches. So,
and the other thing I'll say before we move on is, if you haven't watched Kadarius Toney's highlights, I seriously recommend you watch them. I didn't realize this until after the draft, because I only watched game tape of him. I didn't watch his highlights. Yeah. But that's an incredible highlight video when you string together his best plays. It really is. Yeah. Just because the things that he does, it's not like a normal receiver where he just is running great rep. He's incredibly shifty, and the way he breaks tackles is unlike any player I've ever seen. So it's worth watching. Yeah. Whether that translates to great receiving ability, we'll see. But it is worth watching. So that we spend a lot of time on that. We'll move on quickly to the Indianapolis Colts picking Kwity Paye here at 21. I think we don't have to spend much time on this, because I think we've mocked this multiple times in a row. Yeah. So this is one that we actually got right, was the Indianapolis Colts picking Kwity Paye. Yeah. Makes a ton of sense in terms of need. As far as, fitting with the rest of their draft class, because they obviously needed a receiver badly. They badly needed a tackle. They didn't really get an answer to those questions. But as far as this pick in isolation, my number 2 edge, this is right around where I'd start to draft him. A- for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I echo everything you say. A-. We had this mocked for a while. And the next pick at 22, Caleb Farley to the Tennessee Titans, was kind of early on this prediction that this was going to happen, because this is the kind of team that could take a shot on a guy that could work out to be an A+ pick. Because they didn't move for it. It was just there it was at 22. So I really like the Kwity Paye and Caleb Farley pick. Both get A- for me.
I'm going to give the Caleb Farley pick a B. Again, this factors in, like, the Titans had a ton, more than the Colts. They had a ton of desperate needs. Yeah. And again, you don't want to reach for need, but some of the players that are here line up. Like, I love Caleb Farley as a player, but when you factor in the injury concerns, there are a lot of other avenues that you could have went.
Yeah, if the injury does take him out, it's going to be tough for him. Like, really tough for this pick. And if they don't, I think it'll look a lot smarter than J.C. Horn.
Yeah, you know what? I'm changing my pick because I do love Caleb Farley, and I'm not a fucking doctor, so yeah, I'm gonna change it to a B+. I like Caleb Farley a lot, and I appreciate them taking a shot on a high position of value, a player that could have been picked in the top 10, if he didn't have those back injury concerns. So B+ for me could be an A+ in the future.
A pick that would have a higher grade than a B+ would be the next pick, because Christian Darrisaw was falling down this board, and the Vikings traded down and still got him. So I think based on the player you get, the need you have, and the fact that you got picks with this trade down, that's an A.
Yeah. If you said at the time the Vikings picked Darrisaw at 14, that would have been an A for me. The fact that they collected 2 third-round picks, and you know what they were able to do? They were able to take a free shot on Kellen Mond as a future quarterback, who is my number 6 quarterback.
Yeah.
They were able to take a free shot on him because of that trade down, and they still got a player who is, in my opinion, close to a top 10 talent in this draft, really close to Rashawn Slater for me. One of the picks of the draft right here, like just a grand slam, home run, A+ pick for me.
Yeah, we were saying before the Packers picked down at 29, we were saying, wow, the NFC North is having a killer draft. Penny Sewell going to the Lions, Justin Fields going to the Bears, and then Darrisaw going to the Vikings, plus the trade depth. Like, I was like,
you know what? I think I've only given out 3 A+ all to the AFC North so far.
The NFC North total grade. The NFC North total grade. Like, because I'm coming around on the Eric Stokes pick a little bit, it's an A divisionally A+. Like, they walked away with a franchise-changing quarterback. Anyway, we've already talked about it, but the entire division did incredibly
they did
well.
Great. Yeah.
The next pick is a D. You don't spend a first-round pick on a running back. You just don't.
Yeah. This is an F for me. Just a total.
You do what the Jets did. Pick Michael Carter in the 3rd round, 4th round, whatever. Rather than spending a first round pick on Najee Harris, you're going to have to pay him stupid amounts of money if he's good. And if he's good, guess what? Your efficiency is down. So it's just a silly pick. Overall, it's just running backs should not be picked in the 1st round. I don't care if you're Ezekiel Elliott. Zeke proved that it's not worth it. So Leonard Fournette proved it's not worth it. So, like, continue to spend your first round picks on running backs and continue to make mistakes. Pittsburgh
sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's a D.
Just the difference between Michael Carter going in the 4th versus, and I like, Michael Carter's my number 4 running back. Williams, Harris, and Etienne were all before him.
Yeah.
But if you're saying first or early 2nd round pick versus 4th round pick, give me Michael Carter 10 times out of 10, and twice on Sundays.
Yeah.
Like that's just that simple. You don't spend a 1st round pick on a running back, least of all when you have as many needs as the Pittsburgh Steelers do. Yeah. F pick, if there was an F-, I'd give
the next one is an F too.
I'll just say before we move on, enjoy last in the division, Pittsburgh. Sorry. Jacksonville Jaguars here at 25. Travis Etienne. This one, it's also an F, but it's more of an excusable F. I don't know.
It's like really, an F+ because he was with Trav.
Because the Steelers were going nowhere anyways, right? With Big Ben as their quarterback.
Yeah.
The Jaguars had a chance to go somewhere. They still do, but like this, they could have really sealed that with like a really nice, like Elijah Moore maybe, or like, a Tevin Jenkins, maybe something like that here. But, you burned it on a running back, which was pointless. Not to mention you already had James Robinson, which is funny because James Robinson is exactly why you don't draft running backs in the first round, because you can get a James Robinson for nothing as an undrafted player. So
literally
I'm also
nothing.
giving that an F.
Yeah. That's even worse, actually, the more I think about it. It's an F minus because they already had a good young running back that they spent no value on. So you literally passed like every single player under those running backs I would rather have. Every single one. And I didn't even look at the list that thoroughly. Greg Newsome II was a great pick, in my opinion. He gets a lot of Jair Alexander athleticism comps. I really like this pick for the Browns. To me, it's a B plus, A minus pick because I think good player, good fit. The Browns had an incredible draft. That's what everyone's saying, and it's true. So to me, this is an A minus, B plus pick.
Yeah, for me, it's an A. Greg Newsome II is my number 3 corner, higher than Caleb Farley, who, again, that's because of injury. Caleb Farley would arguably be number 1, but he's pretty close to J.C. Horn for me, just because of Greg Newsome has like the same upside as J.C. Horn, if you ask me. And he's more, right now he's way more scheme versatile than J.C. Horn. It's not even close.
Yeah.
So
it honestly makes the J.C. Horn pick look worse. The more that
it does really. I mean, I don't want to dwell on that too much because we talked about it, but you are right. It does because 26 versus 8, you're getting a very similar player in my opinion. But if you told me one of these cornerbacks that went in the first round is a top 5 corner in 5 years, I would guess Caleb Farley first, and then I would guess Greg Newsome second. Just because that's the kind of, upside that he brings to the table.
Yeah.
And, the Browns, again, just one of the smartest teams in the NFL, taking a shot on a valuable position. Greedy Williams, you obviously have there, and then Denzel Ward is your number 1, but what's another? You can't have too many corners. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's true. You can't have too many corners.
Just ask the Buccaneers, who just won the Super Bowl. So that's an A for me. Moving on to the Baltimore Ravens here with Rashad Bateman. This is another A pick.
Yeah.
Again, this is just he's my number 5 receiver. Very similar to what I said about Kadarius Toney, where it's like what the Giants needed was that kind of shifty guy who can get open, make some people miss, can play in the slot and the outside. That's not what the Ravens needed. They needed a Rashad Bateman who can get open on the outside, make contested catches, win as a number 1 X receiver, which is exactly what the Ravens needed for Lamar Jackson. So that's an A pick for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's an A pick. It's exactly what they needed. And I don't want to echo everything you said because I just agree with it. At the time, we were like, wow, what a great pick. The Ravens are smart like the Browns, like incredibly smart. They make good moves every year in the draft. And you're lucky if you're a Ravens fan because your team never does stupid stuff. Next up, we have Peyton Turner to the New Orleans Saints. Weird pick. We gave a few A's out before this, but this would not be an A for me. I mean, Peyton Turner's fine, but I still think this is the kind of guy you could get in later rounds and not have to worry about spending a first-round pick on him. But the Saints aren't too worried about that, I don't think, at 28. They're just going to take the guy that they want, who's number 1 on their board available here at 28.
Yeah, I don't want to be hypocritical here because I agree with you that Peyton Turner, he's not this high on the consensus board, so you probably could have made a move and gotten him later. At the same time, though, the only edge rushers available that I had higher than on my board than Peyton Turner were Azeez Ojulari, who my Giants got in the second round, and Odafe Oweh, who we're going to talk about in a few picks here. I was surprised when I went to evaluate him how much I liked him. He's raw, but I loved Ronnie Perkins out of Oklahoma. I was expecting to have him higher, but no, Peyton Turner, he's extremely raw in my opinion, but he's huge. He reminds me a lot of Cameron Jordan, which makes sense why the Saints picked him. And he reminds me a lot of Marcus Davenport also, who the Saints also picked in the first round. So I like him better than Gregory Rousseau. I like him better than, I guess no one else that went ahead of him. I liked everyone who went ahead of him, but and I liked Odafe Oweh better. But yeah, my point is, I don't want to ramble too much here. I don't want to be too hypocritical here, so I'm going to give it a B minus. But I like the player and the fit so much. It's not like with Alex Leatherwood, where it's like, if you're going to play him at right tackle, you're going to have a bad time, Raiders. I'm sorry. But with Peyton Turner, it's like, okay, I can see him having a ton of success here with the Saints, who know what they're doing with this type of player. Yeah. So, I got to criticize them for not, trying to manipulate the board more, which is the smart thing to do. But they're getting a good player who could really exceed that draft grade.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. The next pick we have on the list is my Green Bay Packers picked Eric Stokes. And at the time, let me tell you, I was not super thrilled with this pick. I wanted Elijah Moore so bad. You were sitting with me, and I was like, come on, Pack. There was all the stuff. And remember, when this video comes out a little later, don't let it be forgotten that Aaron Rodgers was potentially going to be traded that night. So I was incredibly scared and kind of feeling nauseous, shaky, you name the emotion. I was not feeling good with Aaron going to be traded that night. And normally I'm like, oh, that's just draft smokescreen. But no, it was actually pretty serious. And so I was thinking wide receiver in the first round. Finally, Goot's going to do it. He's going to make him happy. There can be a happy marriage here. But no, they picked a corner. And now when I separate myself from that mindset and I just look at Eric Stokes as a player, I'm falling in love with the pick more and more. He more fits what we want to do with our new defensive coordinator. You can never have too many corners. At least it's a very valuable position, and we didn't draft a guard or something like that. And when I was watching Eric Stokes after the draft, I found that he really reminded me of Jair Alexander, not because they play similarly, but because quarterbacks didn't throw at him. No quarterbacks were throwing at Eric Stokes when I watched him play. And that's a good sign of a corner. The best corner play is when you don't have to block a ball because the quarterback won't even throw at you. So I really like the fit. As you were saying that night that we watched the draft, he's incredibly fast. He's athletic. He's incredibly high, can jump incredibly high, run incredibly fast. He's just kind of a freak athletically. He's a track star. So, I mean, the pick is we're going to have a fast defense. I mean, with what we've put in free agency, plus I believe 7 first-round picks in the last probably 7 or 8 years, it's time for this defense to be elite. Like, it's time to go. Like, we're ready to go. And so the Eric Stokes pick to me, it's probably an A- pick.
Yeah. Interestingly, it's weird because I was like you said, you didn't like this pick at the time. I was trying to console you because apparently I'm one of the highest people on Eric Stokes of like anybody. Like, cause I mean, I didn't really like look at the rankings too much until the Packers met. Like I was looking at rankings, but not really paying specific attention to Eric Stokes until the Packers picked him, where I noticed like he's my number 6 corner. The only corner who was still available that I had ahead of him was Asante Samuel Jr., who in my opinion would have been a much better pick. But he fell to the second because of size concerns. So in any case, yeah, I like Eric Stokes a lot. He is extremely, extremely raw, but he does remind me a lot of Jair Alexander because of the athleticism. That was Jair Alexander's calling card in the first round a couple years ago, was that it was his speed. So, I mean, I think he is I am coming around on this pick as well. I liked it at the time. But I do think it is a reach based on consensus, which again, we've been saying this whole draft. You've got to take advantage of the consensus board that's out there as NFL teams because it helps you to maximize value, which is so important to gain little percentage points on the margins where you can by knowing where other teams value certain players. So yeah, I liked it. I liked him a lot. There's a few players other corners that they could have gone with that I would have liked a lot worse. So in my opinion, I'm going to give this
is that I've been watching so much Eric Stokes highlight tape that my A- might have a little bit of some bias in there just because I've been watching this guy run track meets. Like I'm that into it. Like I'm watching track meets. I'm watching like I'm watching everything you can watch about him. And I've dived into his tape more than a lot of other prospects now. And his potential is incredibly high, but I agree. They could have done more here with the pick. Undoubtedly. I was pissed at the time.
Tyson Campbell went at 33 to the Jaguars, which is a weird pick for other reasons, but he just doesn't have, he's obviously Eric Stokes' teammate at Georgia. He doesn't have the upside that Eric Stokes does. The other thing that I will say to might reassure you about Eric Stokes, he is, we've said it before, he's an extremely raw athlete, but he has all the tools to be a really good corner.
Yeah.
Georgia's coaching staff has not in recent years done a very good job at taking advantage of like their athletes. So Andrew Thomas is a good example. He was the number 4 overall pick last season to the Giants, and he struggled in his rookie season, but he kind of came around towards the end of the year as he started to learn the technique for playing in the NFL. And, that's the Georgia just they don't play NFL ready schemes there. So you get Eric Stokes in a room with real NFL coaches, his potential is extremely high. So I like I said, I'm high on this pick. I will give it a B. Again, just because I have to stay consistent with, how NFL teams don't reach down the board, that kind of thing. So I got to criticize it for that because it was a little bit of a reach, but I'll give it a B. Moving on here to the Buffalo Bills taking Gregory Rousseau. We'll keep this nice and short because for me, Gregory Rousseau was the number 7 edge rusher that I had ranked. Obviously opted out in 2020, so we didn't get to see him. But he just tested poorly this offseason. I don't really see the upside. In my opinion, he's more likely to succeed on the interior than the edge. I would have taken Azeez Ojulari 10 times out of 10 before I took Gregory Rousseau. I don't really like this pick. I think it's low upside and a low floor as well. So I'm going to give it a C.
Yeah, I agree. I give it a B minus, C plus. I like the player. The opt out is a concern. It's such a Bills pick. They love the big defensive end guys, but overall, I think they could have done more with the 30th overall pick, which probably sounds funny, me giving it a C and giving Eric Stokes picks an A minus, but that's just the homer in me. I can't turn that off. The next pick was formerly Jason Away, but now he goes by, I don't want to butcher it. You know how to say it. Odafe Away. The Baltimore Ravens picked at 31. And I really love this pick. I mean, this stems from the Orlando Brown trade. So they got rid of Orlando Brown is on the consensus scale. People think he's better than what I believe, and I know you believe he actually is. So you get a first round pick for a guy you're going to have to pay huge money anyway. Jason Away is the perfect, it doesn't even matter what they did with this pick. It's a win. To get a guy on a short contract, on a cheap contract, who can be very good, plus it fits a need for the team, plus he's a good player. This is an A pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a B plus. Again, because of the trade factoring in, because it's a position of value, and because it's a high ceiling pick. Obviously, it's been said a lot of times this offseason that Jason Away is he's an incredible athlete. We say that about some players, but when we're talking about Odafe Away, he is, he's a different breed at the edge rusher position. He reminds me a lot of Montez Sweat, who, made headlines with his 40-yard dash a few years ago. The only reason why it's not higher is because I would have picked Azeez Ojulari before Odafe Away, who was number 4 on my board. Ojulari was number 3. And I think he fits what the Ravens, I guess maybe that's not true because they do like power rushers and Azeez doesn't really bring power. But as more of a true outside linebacker rusher, I guess that would fit more, and he's the better overall player in my opinion. But the Ravens have the coaching staff to develop this type of raw athlete, so I can't really blame them too much. It's a B plus for me.
Yeah, and the final pick being Joe Tryon by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I thought they were going to take a quarterback here so much. When we were watching, I was like, they're going to take Kellen Mond, they're going to take Davis Mills, they're going to do something.
Well, they did eventually,
but I thought they were going to do it here. This is a fine pick. B minus pick. I think they just could have done more for their team with the 32nd overall pick.
Yeah, this is just another reach to me. I had Joe Tryon ranked as my number 10 edge rusher. I've seen a lot of people say when you turn on the tape, it shows why he should be a first round pick. Even before the draft, people had him a lot higher. I just don't really see it. He was another opt out. They were just I would have gone with Joseph Osai. I would have gone with Carlos Basham. I would have gone with, again, Azeez Ojulari, who it's crazy that he fell where he did. Ronnie Perkins, who went much later. Yeah, I don't know. If you're going to go edge, go in a different direction. But it's like we said all offseason. The Buccaneers could have went any direction with this pick. It didn't really matter.
Yeah.
At least they shot for upside with this pick. So I'm not going to grade it too harshly. I'll give it a C plus.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for hopping on. We're going to be doing more in-depth draft stuff. We're both busy with, outside life things right now, but we're going to be doing full draft grades per team. So please let us know which one. I'll get it posted on our Instagram and our Twitter that we're going to be doing that. So you guys can interact with us and tell us which ones you want us to do, because this was just our general thoughts, a free-flowing conversation about the first round, because it's so fun to just endlessly talk about the draft. So we're going to milk as much as we can out of it. Thank you for watching. Oh, that was kind of cool. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.